Welcome to sort of a instant, not really instant reaction, but rapid reaction maybe, traffic delayed reaction maybe. Carolina blue-white scrimmage today in the Smith Center shortly after the debacle that was Clemson football against North Carolina. Rob Harrington joined me. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt, always our sponsors. Rob, I'll get you in here and overall thoughts. We sort of talked about it a bit off the air. But just a sort of way to lay eyes on this almost completely new roster for Hubert Davis.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was mostly just curious to see what these guys look like in uniform playing with each other. The just how they size wise compare to each other, what they run like, just sort of what the configuration looks like. Where obviously the teams were split, but I mean the most fundamental of analysis. Obviously you can't take away so much from a scrimmage like this, but yeah, I was just curious just to see how the guys look, and I had some takeaways there too, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah, we can dig into those takeaways. I thought it was interesting how they did split it up. A lot of folks in the Smith Center. I would wager that there was more people in the Smith Center than in Keenan Stadium in the fourth quarter, but I'll stay off of that topic. I'll save that for the day after tomorrow on Sunday. But when you look at the way they split it up, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Blue had Trimble, James Brown, Zayden Jaron Stevenson, and Luka Bogovacs. White had Veesar, Evans, Caleb Wilson, Young, and Powell. The two freshmen did not play, nor did the big from High Point. And then they had a couple subs in there. Rob, I thought it was an interesting mix how they did split it up, but we did get to see sort of Evans and Trimble being the point guards on the floor for both teams. What did you think about not necessarily that matchup, but how they both looked?
Well, I thought Trimble was sort of in cruise control, not unlike RJ Davis last year. He was deferring to his teammates because, as we were saying at the top, this was a lot of these guys' first appearance in the Smith Center in front of the public. Trimble is an old head at this point, and a rare one these days. A 4-year player, so he didn't really need to assert himself. I didn't think he played badly, but he wasn't looking to make an imprint. I continue to believe that Evans, based on a lot of film that I watched of him during the summer, is more of the Jimmy Black, Steve Previs style of the 70s, 80s Carolina guard. If he's a point guard, he's not an electric player. I mean, I think we sort of knew that. I didn't see anything today that changed my mind on it. We'll see what happens in the real games. But I like the fact that he wasn't forcing it. I mean, for a guy who was known as a prolific shooter, you wouldn't necessarily have thought that here's someone who's going to call his number a whole lot. He certainly wasn't the quickest trigger on the floor. That would have been Bogovats, and I think they'll need that. Actually, I'm sure he is a lot of fun to watch. I think Evans is going to be a good, solid player. I haven't seen anything from him to suggest that he would be the first or second option offensively, just like Seth Trimble. So I think this is going to be a point guard year, very much unlike the prior Hubert Davis years with RJ Davis and Caleb Love, where their point guard is dominating the action. I don't think this will be that type of team. And personally, I welcome that.
Absolutely. One interesting play later in the game, Trimble came down on a semi-fast break, had his Euro step that he likes to do, and Kyan Evans took it from him. And I thought that was an interesting. As I watched that, I'm thinking Trimble needs to develop a different move a little bit because he's going to telegraph that, and that's going to happen. But Evans and him going at it. But you mentioned Luka. Let's go ahead and get into him. Not flashy, not overly athletic. He just does things. I mean, he knows how to play basketball. He hit, I think, 4 threes tonight or today. Uh, he's a guy. I wondered would he be the leading scorer, but if he plays like he did, and granted, it's a scrimmage against each other, it's just a smooth all-around game. It looks like to me, Rob.
No, I agree. I mean, I think what I like most about him is that he knows where the ball should go, and maybe that's out of his hand toward the rim. But in other occasions, he made really nice passes. I love his sense of floor spacing. I mean, as you said, he obviously knows how to play. He knows how to play team basketball, not just he's not one of these really talented guys who came up in the AAU system and he's going to dribble around and look for something. I mean, he knows how to play a team game and he knows how to read a defense. I think that is going to be critically important for this team, especially if they don't have a dynamic playmaker, which they may not. I think he's going to be, and I love the quickness of his jump shot. That's a college jump shot with a quick release. Even when people are trying to take that from him, he'll still get looks. I think it was sort of similar, not exactly the same, but similar to the way that I always like PJ Harrison's jump shot, because it's a wristy shot as opposed to one of these long extended shots. You know, it's wristy, it's quick. I think he'll be able to get that shot. He has good size for a guard. I think he's going to have a really good year potentially. I mean, again, we don't caveats. We don't want to read too much into this, but I think based on his body of work, I wasn't surprised by how he played, but it was sort of affirming what I hoped to see, and I think that he played at least as well as I hoped he would.
Yeah, I mean, he's older and he's had experience against older guys. And I like when you said he knows how to read a defense. Like he comes down, he sees the setup of the defense, and then he'll sink into the right spot, and he'll end up with a good look for three and all. And I think that's a different dynamic that this Carolina team has had. To your point, we've seen for the last couple of years, it's just pounding the rock into the ground until somebody pulls the trigger. And I think with Luka and with some of these other guys, Powell and Young and all, they know how to find some open spots and get some open looks. Let's talk about Young and Powell, because I don't know what I expect from them, but every time I watch them, I find myself liking their game and what they can add. But maybe it's just me searching for positives. Rob, what'd you see today? Again, with the caveat, it's a blue-white scrimmage against each other. But all these guys are on scholarship. You know, we always like to say they give those guys scholarships too. Well, you don't want to get cooked by a teammate in one of these things. So there is a little bit of competition going on. But what'd you think about Powell and Young?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting much of anything from Young because it seems like every time someone sees the team practice or in a summer setting, he's sort of an afterthought. And he didn't have a good year last year, so I haven't thought much about him. But I thought physically, he looked good among the other players, and I'm using that word intentionally because I don't know that this is going to be a physical team. I would like for them. You can't tell from a sort of a friendly occasion like this, but just based on what we do know about these guys, I don't know they have a banger. Veesar does a lot of things well, but he's not a banger. And I think Young, being a physically mature player, I think that he could give them some of that sort of that, the bully ball pit wing that we've seen come through the Smith Center in recent years. You give them a little bit of that presence. Powell, I think, is going to be a shooter. On balance, I was encouraged by how the team shot the ball, not just misses and makes, but I thought their shots looked like they would translate to actual games instead of these slow release things. I mean, we talked about it last year with Kay Tyson. I mean, you just wondered how is that going to work against a real opponent, and it just didn't work out for him. I think with Powell, I think that's a college jump shot. Kyan Evans, college jump shot. Bogovac, college jump shot. I'm not worried about that. I think that could actually be a strength of this team now.
Talking with Rob Harrington here on Inside Carolina, a little bit of a reaction from the blue-white scrimmage in the Smith Center on Saturday. Rob, of course, is all over it and been involved in all these scouting reports we do and everything. And so having Rob on the show for me is always educational. I hope that our listeners and our watchers are getting as much education as I do when we do these. And as always, Johnny T-Shirt is our main sponsor. Go see him on Franklin Street or in person on Franklin Street or online at johnnytshirt.com. Get all the swag you need. Let's talk about the bigs a little bit. And you mentioned Veesar, and of course I think Caleb Wilson's going to be in there a lot. I'm going to start with James Brown and Zayden High because I don't know how much they're going to play, but Rob, what I did like today is if you're not going to get many minutes, at least make the most of them one way or another. And being active, I think, is a way to do that. High's got a high motor. James Brown's got a high motor. Neither one of them are overly talented, but sometimes hard work can beat talent on the court, and it can give you moments. Let's talk about those two, and then we'll transition into Veesar and the others.
Yeah, I thought I was happy with what I saw based with modest expectations. Brown is not ever probably going to be a dynamic offensive player. He doesn't have the size or athleticism, I think, to do that. His skill level is still coming around, but you can tell that he worked hard on his physique. And if nothing else, then try to be a physical. I mean, we talked about this already, but try to give the team get a defensive rebound, play some good interior defense. Maybe if he is going to have a 4-year future at Carolina, that's what it would be. I think Zayden High is a little bit more interesting for this season because I'm not sure that he and Jaron Stevenson are clear between the two. I mean, High is more active than Stevenson, and Stevenson to me still looks like he was playing like he did at Alabama, where he wants to be outside instead of outside, or even better would be inside. And High might sort of get what Hubert is looking for a little bit better right now. So I think that competition is, at least in my mind, it's not settled. I think Veesar and Wilson are clearly a step up from everyone else. But I think the other three, at least those two, with High and Stevenson, there's still some work to be done to figure out how that would fit into the rotation. I honestly would be surprised if Brown makes the rotation, but I was happy that he came back. It says something for him that he wanted to give it another go, and he clearly worked really hard.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, whether you play 1 minute or 30 minutes, if you play and you come with that energy, it matters and it affects the game. If you could combine Zayden High and Jaron Stevenson, now you'd have a ball player there, because I think, to your point, Jaron Stevenson's got some skills, but he just seems like a floater to me. And I've seen him play in the summer, saw him play at Alabama, except for that Carolina game. It seems like he's just out there. What can he bring? How does he need to get more active? Well, I guess that's probably it, is get more active to help this Carolina team, because Veesar is going to be the main big. And to your point earlier, it's not a banger of a big, and they're going to need that at some point this season. Jaron Stevenson's outlook for you in this team, because he's older, he's played a few years, you kind of know what you're getting, or can he take a step in a different direction?
I would love to see him rebuild his game inside out. Yes, you can still go to the perimeter. The offense is probably still going to be set up that way. We don't know exactly what they're going to run yet. I still think there will be opportunities for him to shoot threes, but I would love for him to focus on being an inside player first, because that's how he would complement Veesar. And Wilson isn't as far along physically; he's younger. Stevenson has the height and the size and the experience, I think, to give them the rebounding presence and interior defensive presence they may need at times, because I could see that being a sore spot for this team. And I think that's how he could get minutes, even if Caleb Wilson is as good as he might be. He's at risk of having his minutes cannibalized by Wilson. A way for him to slot in despite that would be to give the team more of an interior presence.
And Veesar, look, I think he can shoot it well. He had several looks today. I think he's good at getting to the front of the rim and finding the front of the rim, especially when his guy turns his head. We saw that. Now, granted, it was James Brown guarding him most of the time, but he gets to the front of the rim today, and he makes some plays. I just don't know if he's going to – we were talking in the parking lot, in the Bowles parking lot. I said, who led Carolina in rebounding last year? I was asking the crowd. It was Seth Trimble. Is Veesar a guy that can lead this team in rebound, in your opinion?
I don't know. I think he will obviously get some rebounds just by benefit of having great size and good coordination. He doesn't. What you don't see with him, this was true at Arizona too, is he doesn't use his lower body to play outside where he's standing. What I mean by that is he doesn't he doesn't slam into the guy beside him. He doesn't root him out of position. He's sort of a straight line player. He's not going to really dig in the way that like the Tyler Hansbrough type would. And that's obviously an impossibly high standard. But, I think if he's going to become a good rebounder for this team, I think he'll be okay. But if he's going to lead the team in rebounds, to your question, he needs to spread out more, get more physical. Some of his attempts today for rebounds were sort of flybys, swiping at the ball. I mean, you're big, you don't have to do that. That's just sort of how he plays, and it will be tough to reinvent him especially because he's going to be so important offensively. They're going to need him to burn a lot of bandwidth on that end. Yeah, I would love to see him hunker down and be more of a post, but I don't necessarily see him averaging 8 rebounds per game. I would love for him to do it. I'm not all that optimistic on that one.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't. To your point, he doesn't use his butt and legs enough.
You said it a lot
Especially
better
in the
than I
lane.
did.
Yeah, I mean, I've been known to just say it. And to your point, also, I said Stevenson was a floater. He's sort of a flailer, like going to get rebounds. Where if he used his butt and legs and cleared guys out and spread out, to your point, he'd have better opportunity at it. But if they can run the offense where he can pop or roll or get to the front of the rim, I think they can have some big success. It's going to be an interesting dynamic because they've never really had. We heard for 4 years, 5 years that Baycott had a 3-point shot. We never saw it, and now he hits them in whatever leagues he's playing in. Last question for Rob Harrington before we get to just final overall thoughts. But Caleb Wilson, I think he's really good. And something that stands out for me is he's got some dog in him. And everybody that listens to me on these shows, I want a bunch of dogs. You mentioned those Pitt guards, big guards. You mentioned P.J. Harrison. Of course, completely different player, but somewhat of a similar mindset. He'll dunk on you. He'll take you to the rim. He'll try to attack you. And then he goes and gets it on the defensive end, defensive rebounds for the most part. But he's still young. Rob, your take on him?
Yeah, I mean, you can just tell. We talked about when the first thing that you're looking for in a scrimmage like this is how players move and what they look like, and he just has this elite caliber athleticism at that size. You don't need to watch him do anything necessarily. You could just watch him move around the court like, okay, this guy was meant to play basketball. It's just a totally different thing. He clearly, I think, is the best NBA prospect on the team. You can see why they're so interested, because if you move like that at that size, he'll only get better in terms of skill. I'll say this. I like him a lot more for this season. I like him a lot more as Marvin Williams than I do as Kevin Durant. And I think that's going to be the inflection point for him. He's going to have a good year, with good health and all that. I think he'll have a really good year regardless. I think the more he patterns his game after Marvin Williams and gets away a little bit from some of the Durant type fadeaways from 17 feet, he might get there in the NBA. He really might. I just don't think that's going to be his best game this season. I don't think they will necessarily need a lot of that. But man, if he's going to get some offensive rebounds, be a finisher. One thing I love about the front court, and this is true about Veesar and Wilson, is that as they come off high pick and roll, they're both really good rollers because they have good hands and good touch. And I think you saw that from both of them. They can make a play on the move, which prior Carolina big men were not able to do. It's something that the guys last year really struggled with, Lubin and Washington. And so I think that duo could thrive in that setting, especially if they have options on the perimeter who are shooters like Evans and Bogovac, and maybe even Trimble will hit some. Powell out there. I think offensively it fits so much better and will be cleaner to watch. And a lot of it will not just be the guys who are finishing the play, but I think there's going to be some WD-40 supplied by the big guys on all these actions that Hubert likes, which whatever they do, that certainly will be a part of it. The high screen rolls with the rollers. And Wilson, to me, is such an effortless athlete. And as he goes, I expect him to be good in November and maybe really good in February. And that's kind of one of the things I think we'll be tracking. You and I will be discussing it, over the next 6 months.
Yeah, and you got to watch, a young guy that, to your point, is not. He's got a good body on him and a good frame on him, but it's not your big grown college body. And he's going to take a beating, because if he's going to go to the lane and he's going to attack like he's done that we've seen in scrimmages, he's certainly going to take a beating in the ACC and in the non-con. And that, straight out of the gate with Kansas 2 games in. So that'll be an interesting matchup. Just overall thoughts, Rob, going forward. I guess they'll go to Cherokee for the event that they've got going on, and then Brigham Young. That's wild. And then it's upon us, really, because what are we, October 4th doing this now? They start playing early next month. It's crazy how it flies. But how are you feeling, especially when you sort of compare how they've been able to flip this roster, save Trimble, save High, save James Brown from last year to this year? I mean, on paper, right now, I think they've done a good job of it. Time will tell, but your take.
Yeah, I agree. I think offensively, especially, the pieces fit together a lot better. Yeah, we talked all year. We've talked, on air and off air. They have to become less dribbling reliant, and I think you see that. The more they pass the ball, the more they play vertically, the more opportunities will open up for their shooters. The more they dribble, I think that's less likely to happen. And I think we'll probably see some big changes offensively. But I think the personnel, if they do that, can really score a lot of points. Defensively, I don't know. I don't know. At the point of attack, do they have the Trimble? Of course, can guard the point guard, but then that might leave Evans exposed or Bogavats exposed. Neither of those guys projects to be a great defender to me. They have plenty of size and length inside, but do they have the muscle and the physicality that we've already discussed to be a good interior defensive team? I think those are bigger questions. I think they'll probably be solid defensively, but this is not the season I expect that we'll see Hubert, stretching the defense and really attacking and creating steals. They haven't done that prior to this point anyway. But I don't think you'll see a flip this season. I think they probably will still be kind of conservative on defense and try to win games with a clean and pretty offense, which I'm here for it. I mean, I think it will look a lot better. It won't be so tortured with all the dribbling and all the standing around that you and I talked about all last year, and the whole fan base did. Yeah, I think this will be a much more polished offensive machine. We'll see how potent it is, but I think it certainly will be more fun to watch.
Yeah, a clean and pretty offense. My. Would that not be a nice thing to see after what we've seen recently in Chapel Hill?
Yeah,
It is, I said I wasn't going to do it, but I did it. It's too easy. It's too low hanging a fruit. But that's Rob Harrington talk about Carolina blue-white scrimmage. The Tar Heels are back in action on the court. The season is upon us. Stay tuned to Inside Carolina for Rob's analysis. We'll have a fun new show. We'll have post-game shows. We'll have coast to coast. We'll have all the coverage you could ever want. And, of course, Sherelle McMillan and everybody dropping recruiting knowledge. If you're not a member of Inside Carolina at this moment, go to www.insidecarolina.com and sign up for the new site on On3 Network. It's the same site, but it's a new place. Same great content, even better content than before. And you get it by going to Inside Carolina and signing up. Rob, it's always a pleasure.
yes, sir. See you soon.